and welcome to another turbocamaro.ca video. Today we're going to be finishing up the cylinder head. Last you saw I did the lump and port here, and we're going to be finishing that up and doing the valve job today. As you can see, I've actually done it already. All the valves and ports are lapped and everything's clean and just everything's done. So there's really nothing to show you, but I do want to actually walk you through the steps that I took to get here, because there are some important things and some tricks that I kind of picked up along the way that I think are valuable to anybody doing this. So obviously a lot of people leave this to the machine shop, and that's fine, because it is a sort of a tedious process and there's some precision to it that needs to be taken. I'm not exactly a master mechanic, so I can't say for certain that this is the best way to do it, but this is how I've done it, and it seems to have worked pretty well. So first step is going to be to clean the entire cylinder head. I would take it to about 85% clean, maybe 90% clean. You don't want to go all the way, because you are going to be lapping the valves, and that involves using a gritty compound that is going to kind of spray around and it's going to get messy. You probably could clean it up as you go, but the reality is I think getting to a certain level of cleanliness and then doing the entire process and then cleaning it for final prep and paint is the way to go. So clean the whole cylinder head, clean all the valves. Make sure you keep the valves, of course, in the correct order. You want to make sure they stay associated with the cylinder that you're using. Unless, of course, you're using new valves, then that's fine too. You can go ahead and just don't worry about it, but we will be sort of marking them as we go. So get this whole cylinder head clean, get your valves clean. Now, once you've got your valves clean and you're ready to do the actual lapping, you want to make sure you oil the stem. So oil the stem right away, and this is before you even fully clean this. Like, we've obviously wiped it off with some degreaser or whatever, but you need to take off the gunk off of these before you can lap them. So oil the stem and wrap the end with some tape. Now I've already got it, so you wrap the end with some tape, and then what happens, because you've oiled it, is you actually get a fancy little tape tube. And that allows you to put your drill, the chuck of your drill on there, and it won't chew the hell out of the end of the stem. And really, I mean, the end of the stem is less important than the actual traveling area. But then if the stem is damaged here, when you go to insert it through your valve guide, it's going to just scrape it all up, and you're going to have issues with oiling and things. So bottom line is oil it up nice, put some tape on the end. So now you can attach your drill. Once you have it on your drill, you can bring the valve over here, and you can use a wire wheel or a wire brush. I've got a big pipe clamp attached to my bench here, and then a regular wire brush. Now this is a steel brush, not a copper brush or a brass brush. What you want to use is brass if you have it. I found that the brass wasn't doing a good enough of a job. It was too difficult for me to get all of the stuff off I needed to get off, and even then you can see that there is still some buildup on the sort of the underside of it. It isn't going to affect anything, but it means that it will build up that much quicker when it comes time to do the valve job again. I do intend to replace these valves sometime in the near future with some larger ones, so I didn't want to go insane and make them mirror finish or anything. So go ahead, clean up all the valves, keeping them in the correct order, and then you can return them to however you've stored them. In my case, it's a pizza box, and it works very well. So I've got number 11, so valve number 11 here in front of me. So once you've got that oiled up, you can take, or all cleaned up, you can take your tape tube off, which I'm going to try to do with one hand and have some success. And you can use that tape tube for all the valves, because you can't stick the valve in through the port and keep the tape on there. It's obviously not going to fit. So once you've got that there, you can make sure it's all lubricated, and you'll get it into the hole. Maybe. Right, there we go. So you've got it in there nice and smooth, and you just want to make sure that it does fit. It is the right one. I like to just double check, just sort of see how much it fits. Take a look at how much valve seat area you actually have. You want to make sure that there's going to be enough clearance on these, especially if you're using old one, to fit in there. So once it fits and you know it looks pretty good, you can go ahead and you can apply some compound. I'm using the Permatex valve grinding compound. Essentially, it's a lapping compound. It sort of has like a bit of a grit to it, and that's important. Notice that when you take the compound out, you'll probably get some on either your glove or your hand, and it has a grittiness to it. It feels almost like wet sand. You're going to put a thin bead of that around the actual mating surface area that's going to be touching the inside of the port, and then you're going to want to basically, you're going to see spinning this to create a mating smooth surface. Now you can do this in a couple different ways. You can use one of these, It's basically a stick with suction cups on the end. Suction cups stick to this, and then you can spin this by hand, almost like you're whittling wood or you're trying to start a fire. And you just spin this and spin this for, I don't know, 30, 40, maybe a minute if you're lucky. What's going to happen is the compound's going to come out, it's going to seep out, it's going to go on the suction cup, and because it's gritty and whatnot, the suction cup will not stick at that point. It's going to be a complete waste of your time, and you're going to end up cleaning this off and cleaning this off, and that's fine. It's tedious. It is the most precise way because you get a feel for how smooth it is. You can hear the sound of the valve lapping, and if it gets smooth and you don't hear the grit anymore, then you know that you either A, are done, or B, need new lapping compound. So basically, the suction cup method is great, especially if you've never done it before, because it lets you get that feel for it. The other method is going to be to use some sort of a rotary tool. You can use a drill, of course. That's kind of my favorite. You could also use like a speed wrench, like something like this. I know it seems a bit archaic, but you could use something like that. It allows you to, crank it that way instead of using a drill which is powered, which sounds great, but it actually can be a little bit too fast, and you don't want to go too much because then that is going to affect the valve spring heights and whatnot. So bottom line is you get your valve in the cylinder that it belongs in, or the port that it belongs in, and then you access the top of the stem. Now I like to use my little tape hat here and just push it on, maybe. Try to do this with one hand. Push my tape hat on, and then you attach the drill to this side. Now you want to make sure that you do this with two hands because you want to make sure that this drill chuck is actually on the stem flush. You don't want it to be sort of off kilter, because then what's going to happen is it's going to be like a wobbly wheel, and it's going to be all which is going to cause the pattern on the front of this to not spin correctly, and you're going to have an uneven mounting surface or flush surface, which is going to cause all kinds of problems. So when you're done, when you spun it a few times, take it out with the drill. It's probably only about 10 or 15 seconds. What you'll notice when you're done is you'll take the hat off, slide this valve out, and you'll see that the product that's on there is no longer gritty. It's going to be like a smooth paste. It's almost like a sticky milk, and it won't have any effective use when you're spinning it in there. You probably have to do this 2, 3, 4 times in order to get it done. It sounds quick and easy, but it's really kind of time consuming and tedious, because you really want to make sure as you're going through the process that you don't get any of the compound on the stem. Now, that sounds easier said than done, because you have gloves on and you're getting transfer on your gloves. You're using a cloth to wipe off both surfaces, and then the cloth touches it. So you have to be very careful, and it's something that I honestly did it mostly inside my house. I didn't want to do it out in the shed where everything's dirty. Do it on the house, get a big, lint-free blanket or something, or a lint-free towel or whatever you've got. Lay it down on that, sit in front of the TV, and just go to it. It's not very messy, but it is time-consuming and tedious. So once you've got those done, you're going to end up with something like this. And like I said, you've got a smooth surface, and there's no little dimples. You can see as you go through it, if you don't do a perfect job, there's going to be little dark spots, and those dark spots, of course, are the color of the actual valve showing through, and those dark spots are basically areas that are low, and if it's low like that, then it's not going to mate perfectly. You probably don't need to be perfect, because honestly engines run in much worse conditions than this, but if you're going to go to the trouble of actually putting new valves in, or going to the trouble of painting and restoring an old part like this, you might as well go ahead and do a pretty good job. It doesn't take that much effort, and you're going to come down to you'll get about halfway through and go, well, geez, I wish I wouldn't have started this. It's so time consuming, but that's okay. So bottom line is you've got all your valves lapped. Now it's time to do any other last minute things. You might have some casting you got to deal with, like this here. You might have like this here. My lump is sort of sticking up beyond the surface of the where the manifold's going to go, and just anything like that. There's probably some more gasket here left, little bits I can clean up. You can use a straight razor blade. It's perfect on some of these sort of things here where you've got leftover gasket or buildup, and just get this really smooth. All right, so we finished up with the head here. You can see that everything is a lot cleaner. You might not be able to see actually from this angle. It probably looks worse. I've actually got a little bit of the surface rust starting because everything's all cleaned up. But either way, the lumps are smooth in the front. I've done a little bit of a porting job here around the edges. No more rough edges anymore. I've cleaned up all of the ports. I'm going to try to flip this for you here. You can see that for the most part, all of the combustion chambers are done. Everything is super clean. It's, for the most part, there is nothing left that isn't just a slight buildup of surface rust, so that's fine. And now what we want to do is get this all masked off so that we can paint it. So I'm going to mask it first with the same technique used to do the engine block, and then I'm going to do a little bit of cleaning just to get rid of some of that surface rust, and then I'm going to paint it with the same black pearl metallic VHT paint we used before. I'm not going to get into all the crazy details of that. If you want to know how I painted the engine block and how I'm going to paint this exactly, feel free to check out the engine block painting video. Cylinder head's all masked off. I just used the gaskets as a template. You can see I just put it on a 4-liter paint can. That way I can spin the cylinder head around as I paint it and I don't have to worry about touching anything, and I can get all sides of it. So I'm just going to use that VHT paint and we'll see how it turns out. And that's all done. So you can see here I got the valve cover on, and more for just effect than anything. And you can see the transition from the actual painted surface to the gasketed surface area. So it's nice smooth lines all the way along. It's still one of my favorite paints, the VHT metallic black pearl. Looks awesome virtually in any light. Not the greatest on film, but looks great in person, so really happy with that. Next up is going to be doing the valve train area, so I'll be doing the springs, installed height, and things like that. I'm going to do that in a separate video, so stay tuned. If you have any questions, feel free to go ahead and ask in YouTube or on turbocamaro.ca, and feel free to subscribe if you want to get more updates as they come. Thank you for watching.